Hi and welcome to Elite Mind Academy. This is Pawel Potasinski and you're watching the third episode of Snowflake on Azure series. Today I'm going to talk about how to load the data into Snowflake and how to unload the data from Snowflake to your data lake. The very first thing you want to do with your data when working with analytical platform is to load the data so you could utilize the power of the platform to query the data to analyze things. So with that, let's see how to load the data into Snowflake. Okay, so let's see how data loading and unloading looks like in Snowflake on Azure. So first thing you need to know while working with Snowflake is that Snowflake operates with stages. Stage is an object in a database that allows you to easily connect to external or internal storages in order to bring files into Snowflake's tables. So there are actually 4 types of stages. Normally you would probably use named external stages as your primary choice because that would allow you to connect to your external data lakes that resides in Azure, Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud Platform. In particular, in this case, I would choose Azure Data Lake Storage Generation 2 to bring you some more insights on how you can connect from Snowflake to this particular storage. But of course, you can utilize different storages from different clouds, and you're not limited to the cloud that you use for storage for using Snowflake account. Now, the second type of stages is the named internal stage. With that, you're pointing that Snowflake should create a storage for you and keep it internally. So this storage will be created in the cloud of the choice that you made while deciding where your Snowflake account will reside. Now, the third part is that you can use user stage, which is dedicated to your user in Snowflake. So you can easily put your files, even from your own computer, into the Snowflake. And the fourth type of stage is table stage, which always exists whenever you create a table. So each table has its own stage dedicated for bringing data into this particular table. This type of stage is used in particular when you are using load table feature of Web UI of Snowflake. So with that, the pattern of loading and unloading the data into Snowflake is quite easily. You can utilize copy from statement to copy the data from the stage into Snowflake, and the other way from Snowflake to any particular stage. So this is very simple statement. It can have different options whenever you're doing your copy operations. Now, the supported formats are the following. It's CSV files, so flat files. It's JSON, so you can utilize the power of semi-structured data. But it's also a bunch of compressed file formats like Avro, ORC, or Parquet. Also, you can use XML files to bring the data into Snowflake as well. Now, for unloading, you can use one of the 3 data formats: CSVs, JSON files, or Parquet. So be careful; you're not able to exchange the data in the same data formats as you can use for uploading the data into Snowflake. Now, let me show you how the process looks like from the user perspective. So basically, this is Snowflake Web UI, and I'm going to use one very simple and small data warehouse I have created before. So ETL WH is my warehouse, and I've already selected this warehouse for being my context, but also I will use DemoDB database and public schema to load the data into Snowflake. Now, in order to bring the data into Snowflake, let's assume that I have already created the data lake. So I have already some data that will be imported into Snowflake. Let me show you this data. So I'm switching to Azure portal, And here I have Azure Data Lake Store Generation 2 with my Data Lake container. And I see that there is some raw data residing in some subfolders. But finally, I have my files, and those are CSV files, as you can see. So each of those CSV files contains some data. Those files have their headers. So the first line is the header of the file, and then you have the data. So I'm going to use those files and load the data from them into Snowflake table in a moment. But to do that, I have to create a stage. And if you remember the slides, I have to create an external name stage. So first of all, I need to figure out how to connect in a secure way to the Azure Data Lake storage. So I will utilize the power of storage integration feature in Snowflake. Storage integration is a kind of integration between Snowflake and the external storage in a way that allows you to avoid passing any kind of credentials between Snowflake and the storage. So there will be no passwords, no keys, no shared signatures, just the context of Snowflake Enterprise application, as you can see in a second. So I have to switch to my account admin role to do that, because that requires to uplift my my permissions. And then I create a storage integration called demo store int, which will be a type of external stage pointing to Azure. This will be enabled by default, and it will point to the storage that is somewhere in the Azure tenant of this ID. So this is particularly the identifier of my Azure Active Directory tenant. It identifies where I would look for my Azure storages. And I point to two allowed locations just to make sure that I'm not going to access any additional data lakes or storages in this Azure tenant. So let me create that. And by running this command, and I will grant usage of this in storage integration to the sysadmin role, because I'm going to switch to the lower permission level role sysadmin in a moment. And let's describe this storage integration, because that's required actually in order to do the next steps. So as you can see, one of the properties is Azure consent URL, and when I click that, or actually when I put this one in the browser, it will redirect me to the page where I'm asked for permission for granting permission to the newly created enterprise application named Snowflake PAC INT 0120. So I will accept that, because I need this enterprise application in order to integrate my Snowflake account with my data lake in Azure. And that's it. So what actually happened in this moment, if I move to Azure portal, to Azure Active Directory, and I look into enterprise applications and look for Snowflake, you can see there is my Snowflake PAC INT enterprise application, and this is the moment I have to take care about the permissions in the data lake for this particular application, so I could connect from Snowflake to my data lake easily. So let's get back to my Snowflake to my data lake, and I'm going to pick access control. And here I will assign storage blob data contribution role to my newly created Snowflake PAC enterprise application. If I do that, I'm already done, and I can try to connect to my data lake from Snowflake account that I'm working with. So let's get back to my sysadmin role. Let's make sure that I have no stages in my database, and let's create one. So I'm taking my data lake URL. Now be careful, because as of now, Snowflake does not support the data lake storage generation to native interface. You have to use the blob storage API. So basically, if you want to grab this URL, you need to go to your data lake storage account in Azure portal, look for the properties, and then you see that there is a blob service endpoint here, and this is your URL actually. So of course you can then add some additional container names and folder names, but that's the first part of the URL. So I have my URL ready. So let's create the stage, the external stage. So basically, this is the same as I would go to databases, stages, create, and here you can see that you can create internal Snowflake stage here, or you can pick one from the major cloud storages as your external stage. So I'm not going to do that because I've already created my stage with a code. And now I can list my stage. Sometimes you need to wait a moment for Active Directory and Azure to synchronize, but just keep trying to list your files in the stage, and at some point you will succeed. Well, if you do all the steps required before. So I have my stage. As you can see, the files can be easily listed by running list command. So I see that there are my CSV files stored within my data lake. So now let's create a table that will be used in Snowflake to grab the data from the data lake and bring them to Snowflake. So I'm creating a table, and now let's create a file format for importing my files, my CSV files. So I'm going to create one using interface. So I move to file formats in my database, and I create a file format, the demo format CSV. This is going to be a format type CSV. It's going to have a header, so header lines to skip is 1, and fields can be optionally enclosed by double quote, because I can have some text identifiers in double quotes as well. So let's create this one, and now if I have my stage and if I have my file format, I can run this statement, which is going to select data from my data lake using this file format. So I can easily try whether my file format fits the files that are stored within my data lake. So yes, I can list the data that is stored in the file. So there is only one step left. All I have to do right now is to copy the data from my stage into my table. So I'm just pointing to this demo stage, pointing to the right path of the files, using my demo format CSV to align the format. I specify an error attribute to continue. So whenever an error occurs, actually the loading continues. But I will have some information in my history on where the errors occurred in the import process. So with that, let me run this copy. And in a second, I should have my data in my sales by day table. Now, if you look at the details of this data loading process, you can see that Snowflake immediately returns things like which file was loaded, how many rows were loaded and parsed, what was the number of errors, and so forth. So to see only errors from my last data loading process, I can run this particular statement to see to use the validate function and see the history of my last data loading process. And I can see that there were some errors actually. Over 3,000 rows were not accepted by the loading process because of some errors. And typically this error, as you can see, is quite the same for all the rows, and it's something about timestamps. So basically, this is about the date format. So what I'm going to do, right now, I have this number of rows. It's over 500,000. So let's make sure that the last file is also imported into this table. So I will change the timestamp format for my file format object. So let me move to my file format, and let me edit this file format I've already created. So let me move to my timestamp format, and instead of auto, I will choose other, and I will enter my file format, timestamp format. Now, let me try again. You would expect that this particular statement, this is the same statement I've executed before, would try to load all the files, over 300 files. But no, this statement is going to import only one file because Snowflake knows that I've already imported all the other files from the stage. So it's a kind of intelligence that that stages have already in them to make sure that my process is as easy as possible. So now I can see that my last loading process did not contain any error, and I'm done. And the actual number of records is bigger than in the previous loading process. So I have my data in the table, and I can start to make some analysis. Okay. For example, I can summarize my invoices because those are invoices by country and month, showing the number of invoices, grouping and ordering by country and month, and I can see how many invoices were per month and per country. Eventually, I can create a temporary table that contain sales summary for future use, right? Now, if I want to deal with semi-structured data, the pattern is practically the same. So I create a stage, and I create a table to hold my data, and then I create a file format for JSON files, which is a bit different from what you have seen for CSVs. So let me create this file format, and let's move to JSON format type. And let's leave the other options untouched. So I will be importing a file from Google Analytics. This is going to be GA. Let me just look for the file. Yeah, so here I have a file, and let me just show you this file. This is a Google Analytics sample file containing the number of visits, time of the visits on the web pages, so typical clickstream from the websites. And I will try to import this data into a table using demo format JSON. And I will import that using Web UI. So I move to tables in my database. I have my JSON, GA clicks JSON table. And if I enter this table, I have load table option, which allows me to point my file I will use for that ETL WH warehouse. Now I can point my file. So let me just pick my file, GA. Yeah, there is. It can be compressed, but I'm going to choose the uncompressed form. I'm choosing my JSON format, the JSON file format, and I'm going to roll back whenever an error occurs. Now what Snowflake does is it encrypts my file. So the file is never sent in a clear form. It's always encrypted, it's secure, and it sends it to the table stage actually, and it loads the data into Snowflake. So now I can see actually that the file is already in my GA-clicks JSON file. But of course, this data is not in the clear tabular format because it's still semi-structured. But I can easily deal with that using features of Snowflake that allow me to work with semi-structured data. For example, lateral flatten function. So I can unpack the hits. So I could see that there were this number of hits per hour, per day. So this analytics can be easily done using semi-structured data in Snowflake. Now the last part of loading, I will show you how to load the data on your own from your computer using your personal stage, user stage. So to do that, I will utilize the let me run the console, and I will use the SnowSQL command line application. So let me just run the SnowSQL command line tool that Snowflake provides to connect to my Snowflake account. I'm using the predefined configuration that contains the name of the Snowflake account as well as my credentials. So I'm connected to my account. Now I have to specify warehouse. So let me specify the warehouse. And let me choose the ETL WH, and let me just run it. So I have already specified the context of the warehouse. Now let's move to my demodb.public schema, and now let's truncate the table GA-clicks JSON. So I'm removing all the rows from this table just to load this table again. Now let me see whether I have anything in my user stage. So to access user stage, you're going to use the add tilde, and you can see that the only thing I have in my user stage are the worksheets and metadata information. There are no files actually. So be careful, because Snowflake is keeping some things in your user stage. So do not perform the deletion of all the objects in this stage, because you may remove your currently used worksheets, and that could affect your work definitely. So let me just put some file that I have in my C temp. This is the GA sessions sample JSON file, right? And I'm going to put this into my user stage. So I will just put it here. So I will just put it into my user stage alone. Now, what Snowflake does again, it encrypts my file and it sends it in the gzip format. So it also compress my file and it sends it to my user stage. Now, if I list my stage, you will see that the compressed GA sessions sample JSON file is already there. Now, I can easily load this file into my table using the copy statement. So I will just copy into GA clicks JSON from my user stage, GA sessions sample .json.gz, and at the same time I have to use the file format, and here I will use this type JSON. So this is actually the file format ad hoc implemented in the statement. I'm not going to use the existing file format that I've already created in my database. With that, I should have my data in the table. So I will just do a simple select count star from GA_clicks_JSON. And it should show me the 63 rows in my table. So yeah, I've already imported the data again using my user stage into the GA_clicks_JSON table, so I can quit my SnowSQL CLI now. So the only thing left in this presentation is how to unload the data from my Snowflake account, from my Snowflake table to the data lake. So the copy statement is quite simple because I just reverse the order of things provided into the statement. So I'm copying into my data lake using the external stage from my table. So I created a sales summary table, as you can remember. So I can now send my summarized data to my, let's say, sandbox, analytical sandbox, in order to provide some insights for the analysts. So I will just do that. The result CSV file named invoices summary CSV will be in CSV format, CSV file type. It will be not compressed. It will contain a header, and it's going to be a single file. And if it exists, it's going to be overwritten. And I can check whether in my Snowflake, whether in my data lake I have my file existing. So let me just move to the container and to the data lake to validate whether I have my file created. But you can see there is a sandbox, sales, and the invoices summary file that contains my aggregated data from Snowflake. As you can see, loading the data into Snowflake is not a very complex task. Using Snowflake stages, you can easily connect to your data lakes, grab the files from the storages, and then load them to the Snowflake platform and make some analytics on top of that, or build your data warehouse, by the way. At the same time, you can unload the data from Snowflake to your data lake in order to archive some data, or maybe provide some excerpts of your analytics to other platforms. So you can communicate between Snowflake and data lake easily both ways. I hope you enjoyed this episode. In the next episode, I will show you how to utilize the power of virtual warehouses in Snowflake. Thank you for watching.